Hey guys, this is me again, Shalome Ordines. Yes, I'm back for another video. For today's vlog, I'm going to tackle about culture, its meaning, its characteristics, and its function. And if you are interested, just keep on watching. So, let us define first the meaning of culture. Culture. An individual is described as a highly cultured person, meaning thereby that a person in question has certain features, such as his speech, manner, taste for literature, music, or painting, which distinguish him from others. Sometimes, culture is used in popular discourse to refer to a celebration or an evening of entertainment, as when one speaks of a cultural show, such as dance, music, and drama. Culture is used in a special sense in anthropology and sociology. It refers to the sum of human beings' life ways, their behaviors, belief, feeling, thought, and everything that is acquired by them as a social beings. Culture has been defined in number ways. There is no consensus among sociologists and anthropologists regarding the definition of culture. One of the most comprehensive definitions of the term culture was provided by the British anthropologist Edward Taylor. He defined culture as that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Capabilities and habits such as language and the technique for making and using tools. There are many writers who added the definition of culture. First, if culture exists only where there is communication, then the content of culture can be ideas or symbol patterns. Culture is then an immaterial phenomenon only, a matter of thoughts and meanings and habits, and not of visible and touchable material things or objects. That is according to Sutherland and Woodward. Second, according to McIlvore, culture is the expression of our nature, in our modes of living, in our thinking, intercourse in our literature, in religion, in recreation, and enjoyment. And according to E.A. Hubel, culture is the sum total of integrated learned behavior patterns which are characteristic of the members of a society and which are therefore not the result of biological inheritance. Combining several of these definitions, we may define culture as a sum total of human achievement, or the total heritage of man which can be transmitted to man by communication and tradition. It is the way of life other people in a certain geographical area where lifestyle and social pattern of a society being the direct consequences of the accumulated heritage of ages past that distinguish and differentiate one community from another. Therefore, culture is moral, culture is intellectual, and spirit discipline for advancement in accordance with the norms and values based on accumulated heritage. Culture is a system of learned behavior shared by and transmitted among the members of the group, and culture is a collective heritage learned by individuals and passed from one generation to another. So, Culture is a strong part of people's lives. It influences their views, their values, their hopes, their loyalties, and their worries and fears. So when you are working with people and building relationship with them, it helps to have some perspective and understanding of their cultures. From the various definitions, we can deduce the following characteristics of culture. First is learned behavior. Not all behavior is learned, but most of it is learned. Learned behavior is a behavior that occurs only after experience or practice. Think about some of the behaviors you have learned. They might include riding a bicycle, using a computer, and playing a musical instrument or sport. You probably did not learn all of these behaviors in the same way. Perhaps you learned some behaviors on your own just by practicing it. Other behavior you may have learned from the other people. And there are two types of behavior, the overt behavior and covert behavior. When we say overt behavior, it is a human behavior which can observe in some way, just like our physical actions, like shaking hand with friend, slapping a person, dancing, walking, and etc. Verbal behaviors and facial or bodily gestures are overt behaviors because this can be observed as this can be seen or heard. And covert behavior is a human behavior which cannot be observed because it is the mental processes in mind, such as thinking, retrieving memories, processing information, granular response, and cognition. This cannot be observed because this cannot be seen or heard by others. The second characteristic of culture is abstract. Culture exists in the minds or habits of the member of society. Culture is the shared ways of doing and thinking. There are degrees of visibility of cultural behavior, ranging from the regularized activities of persons to their internal reasons for so doing. In other words, we cannot see culture as such, we can only see human behavior. This behavior occurs in regular, patterned fashion and it is called or what we call culture. Third, culture is a pattern of learned behavior. The definition of culture indicated that the learned behavior of people is patterned. Each person's behavior often depends upon some particular behavior of someone else. The point is that, as a general rule, behaviors are somewhat integrated or organized with related behaviors of other persons. Fourth, culture is a product of behavior. Culture learnings are the product of behavior. Because as a person behaves, there occur changes in him. He acquires the ability to swim, to feel hatred towards someone, or to sympathize with someone. They have grown out of his previous behaviors. In both ways, human behavior is the result of behavior. The experience of other people are impressed on one as he grows up, and also many of his traits and abilities have grown out of his own past behaviors. Fifth, culture includes attitude, values, and knowledge. So there is widespread error in the thinking of many people who tend to regard the ideas, attitude, notion which they have as their own. So, it is easy to overestimate the uniqueness of one's own attitude and ideas. When there is an agreement with other people, it is largely unnoticed, but when there is a disagreement or difference, one is usually conscious of it. Your differences, however, may also be cultural. For example, suppose you are a Catholic and the other person is a Protestant. Sixth, culture also include material objects. So man's behavior results in creating object. Men were behaving when they made these things. To make this object required numerous and various skills which human beings gradually built up through the ages. Man has invented something else and so on. Fifth, culture is shared by the members of society. The patterns of learned behavior and the result of behavior are possessed not by one or a few persons, but usually by a large proportion. Thus, many millions of persons share such behavior patterns as Christianity, the use of automobiles, or the English language. Persons may share some part of a culture unequally. For example, as Americans do the Christian religion, to some persons Christianity is the all-important, predominating idea in life. To others it is less preoccupied or important. To still others it is of marginal significance only. 8. Culture is superorganic. Culture is sometimes called superorganic because it implies that culture is somehow superior to nature. The word superorganic is useful when it implies that what may be quite a different phenomenon from a cultural point of view. For example, a tree means different thing to the botanist who studies it, the old woman who uses it for shade in the late summer afternoon, the farmer who picks it fruit, the motorist who collides with it, and the young lovers who carve their initial in its trunk. Ninth, culture is pervasive. Culture is pervasive because it touches every aspect of life. The pervasiveness of culture is manifest in two ways. First, culture provides unquestioned context within which individual action and response to take place. Not only emotional action but rational actions are governed by cultural norms. Second, culture pervades social activities and institutions. Tenth, culture is a way of life. And according to Clohan and Kelly, culture means simply the way of life of a people or their design for living. So, a culture is a way of life of a group of people. The behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols that they accept, generally without thinking about them, and that are passed along by communication and imitation from one generation to the next. 11th, culture is a human product. Culture is not a force operating by itself or independent of the human actors. So, there is an unconscious tendency to defy culture, to endow it with life and treat it as a thing. Culture does not do anything on its own. It does not cause the individual to act in a particular way, nor does it make the normal individual into a maladjusted one. Culture, in short, is a human product. It is not independently endowed with life. 12. Culture is idealistic. Culture embodies the ideas and norms of a group. It is sum total of ideal patterns and norms of behavior of a group. Culture exists of the intellectual, artistic, and social ideals and institution which the member of the society profess and to which they strive to conform. 13. Culture is transmitted among members of society. The cultural way are learned by from person, Many of them are handed down by one's elders, by parents, teachers, and others. For example, the styles of dress, political views, and the use of recent labor saving devices. 14th, culture is continually changing. So there is one fundamental and inescapable attribute of culture, the fact of unending change. So some societies at some times change slowly and hence in comparison to other societies seem not to be changing at all, but they are changing even through the obviously so. 15th, culture is variable. Culture varies from society to society, group to group. Hence, we say culture of India or England, for their culture varies from group to group within the same society. There are subcultures within a culture, cluster of patterns which are both related to general culture of the society and yet distinguishable from it are called subcultures. 16th, culture is an integrated system. Culture possesses an order and system, so its various parts are integrated with each other and any element which is introduced is also integrated. 17th, which is the last characteristic of culture. Language is the chief vehicle of culture. Man lives not only in the present but also in the past and future. He is able to do this because he possesses language which transmits to him what was learned in the past and enable him to transmit the accumulated wisdom to the next generation. So a specialized language pattern serves as a common bond to the members of a particular group or subculture. Although culture is transmitted in a variety of ways, language is one of the most important vehicles for perpetuating cultural patterns. To conclude, culture is everything which is socially learned and shared by the members of a society. It is culture that, in the wide focus of the world, distinguishes individual from individual, group from group, and society. Now let's go to the function of culture. The first function of culture defines situation. Each culture has many subtle causes which define its situation. It reveals whether one should prepare to fight, run, laugh, or make love. For example, suppose someone approaches you with the right hand outstretched at waist level. What does this mean? That he wishes to shake hands in friendly greeting is perfectly obvious that is to anyone familiar with our culture. But in other place or time, the outstretched hand might mean hostility or warning. One does not know what to do in a situation until he has defined the situation. The second function of culture is culture defines attitude, values, and goals. So each person learns in his culture what is good, true, and beautiful. Attitude, values, and goals are defined by the culture. Attitude are tendencies to feel and act in a certain ways. Values are measure of goodness or desirability. For example, we value private property, government, and many other things and experience. And goal are those attainments which our values define as worthy, like winning the race, gaining the affection of a particular girl, or becoming president of the firm. By approval, the third function of culture is culture defines myth, legends, and the supernatural. Myth and legend are important part of every culture. They may inspire, reinforce effort and sacrifice, and bring comfort of bereavement. Whether they are true is sociologically unimportant. Ghosts are real to people who believe in them and who act upon this belief. We cannot understand the behavior of any group without knowing something of the myth, legend, and supernatural belief they hold. Myth and legend are powerful forces in a group's behavior. And fourth, which is the last function of culture. Culture provides behavior patterns. The individual need not go through painful trial and error learning to know what food can be eaten without poisoning himself or how to live among people without fear. So, the individual does not have to wonder how one secures a mate. He knows the procedure defined by his culture. Culture and society. The relationship between society, culture, and personality is stressed by Ralph Linton. And according to him, a society is organized group of individuals. A culture is organized group of learned responses. The individual is living organism capable of independent thought, feeling, and action. But with his interdependence limited and all his resources profoundly modified by contact with the society and culture in which he develops. A society cannot exist apart from culture. A society is always made of persons and their groupings. People carry and transmit culture, but they are not culture. No culture can exist except as it is embodied in a society of man. No society can operate without cultural directives. Like matter and energy, like mind and body, they are interdependent and interacting, yet express different aspects of the human situation. One must always keep in mind the interdependence and the reciprocal relationship between culture and society. Each is distinguishable concept in which the patterning and organization of the whole is more important than any of the component parts.